Well, hello there, humans, hippies, earthlings, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and whoever you're lucky enough to be doing it to. I'm Bushka Blitz, and I'm here today to have a chat with you guys about which pie-eating machine of justice is the right pie-eating machine for a pie eater like you. What particular pie takes your fancy? Is it the mouse? Is it the E100? Two big nasty heavies. It used to be a foregone conclusion for me. The E100 was the runaway winner. It was a walk-up start to take home the chocolate rations. But as time has progressed, games have really changed in terms of meta, in terms of damage output. So many different things have happened to the game. And I've found that the mouse has really started to become a little bit of a show pony. And with that in mind, I'm going to answer the question for me anyway, which tank is the one that I really want to be driving into the nasty stuff? Now, the mouse and the E100, although they're both German tanks, are particularly different in a couple of key aspects. And it's interesting because they're enormous tanks. They're two of the one is the heaviest, one of them is one of the heaviest tanks in the game. But they have very, very different armament. The mouse does not have the crazy 150mm that the E100 has. It's got a 120mm gun. The E100 does not have the crazy, stupidly large amount of armor that the mouse has. It's still got pretty good armor though. So how do you choose which pie-eating machine is going to be the right one for you? Well, let's talk first about what kind of playstyle they bring to the game. In a huge and completely non-controversial call, I'm going to say that the mouse is fantastic as a defensive side-scraping channel tank. And it's defensive in a way that the E100 isn't. You can angle this thing up and you literally just cannot be penned. With the E100, there's generally a little bit of a gap somewhere. And the reason it's become so strong is, well, it's been buffed a little bit, but it's more than that. It's the fact that Wargaming has done a really good job at lowering the damage output of tanks in the game. They've done it in a couple of ways, and I've talked about this before on both podcasts and in-game. They have removed the damage output of premium ammunition. Obviously, you do less damage when you fire promo now, which I think is brilliant. Just absolutely brilliant. And it's not a revolutionary idea because it's something that we've been talking about, me and my mates, ever since the game started, how to balance promo. I mean, and we've all pretty much been at that idea for a long time, that you pen more, but you do less damage. It seems like a lay-down misere, and the guys at Wargaming have come across and decided that's the way forward as well. But more than that, they've changed a couple of other key factors. Firstly, not every tank that is out there now runs around with vents and a gun rammer. Vents and a gun rammer gave you more crew skills, which again increased rate of fire, accuracy, everything like that. And gun rammer was at 10% to your pure guns reload speed. Gun rammer now only does 7%. And vents is something that you can't get unless you're driving an autoloader. So you've straight away knocked potential off there. You've knocked potential damage per minute right off that. And that means that the big heavy boys with really big hit point pools are that much harder to get through. And in a game that can often be balanced on the edge of a knife, people being encouraged to fire standard AP rounds with lower penetration numbers at both the mouse and the Air100 makes them more effective because they've got big hit point pools. Now, the mouse has an incredibly monstrous hit point pool. The biggest in the game. And that's well and truly deserved, 2,500 hit points. And if you remember back in the day, a lot of the time when you're in a mouse, you'd be facing Object 140s and T62As. They would be hull down. They would be pretty much impossible for you to pen consistently in a mouse with your big, ugly gun handling. And they would fire 330 millimeters of heat pen for full damage at full gun rammer and full vents, whatever you wanted, straight through. So you would be able to smash the mouse. And that's no longer the case. And because of that, these guys have really become way more fun to play. And they've got a great place in the game. And for me, the game is right now in a better place than it's been in a very, very long time. The level of stupidity in having mediums that could play as heavy tanks really marginalised the role of true heavy tanks like the Mouse and the E100, and to a lesser extent the IS-4 and the IS-7, because they get crazy mobility. Whereas the Mouse and the E100 were based around corridor fighting and holding as choke point and having hit points that they could burn through and do good things with. And having light and medium tanks, rather, that could perform like heavy tanks really made them totally null and void. They were persona non grata as far as I'm concerned. And it's good to me that they've come good and they've got a little bit of a positive outlook now on life. Now, of the two tanks, which one are you going to drive? This thing here offers a pretty unique tank. The E100 has quite a lot in common with tanks like the T110E4, which has a 150mm gun and a turret and plays a lot like a heavy tank. And indeed, a lot of the other tanks in game that run 150mm guns. A lot of them are TDs, obviously, but for all that, they exist and they have a very similar playstyle. They aren't as strong as the E100. But what the Mouse gives you is this insane, totally insane tank that can hold key points and, if you angle it correctly, pretty much bounce everyone. Even when you've got good shots at a Mouse, as you can see here, he's nearly completely side on. Look at his upper glacis and his turret and everything. I mean, it just refuses to go clear and present. I'm going to show you one more game in the Mouse, and I'm going to show you a couple of games in the E100. Now, I used to write this thing off a lot because, as I mentioned, it just wasn't that relevant in the meta. It's also very, very prone to side scraping, but it's had a bit of a mobility renaissance. They've helped out with that, and the armor is very, very good. But what it really is fun to do with, what's really fun to do in this thing, is find an area like this and try and hold it. Now, you can see, I know there's a 215B out there. What I'm going to attempt to do here is keep everyone I can spotted and let the two guys behind me, the two camping TDs, the three camping TDs behind me, get some shots. Now, I'm not a big fan of this playstyle from the TDs. I don't think it's relevant. I think it could be a lot better if they had moved around. But for all that, if they're going to be there, this is what I've got to do. I've got to be a corridor fighter and I've got to hold. And you're going to see at numerous occasions here how I can over-angle my chassis and keep my turret pointing towards the building and away from the rest of them. And see, just there, I took 340 damage. That's because the 215B probably had to fire Premo. This 122-44 pushes up. We're still angling to all the tanks in front of us, the tanks. And even though we're going to take some damage, we are going to be able to put shots into the 122-44, and we've got 2,500 hit points. So we've taken a couple of shots, but by no way, shape or form have we taken enough damage to really make a big difference. And we're still bouncing shots. A crazy amount of shots against other same tier and tier below heavies, despite the fact that they are using premium ammunition, because the weak points on the Mouse are quite small. You can get in trouble with it, absolutely. But even when you're angled up at really steep angles, you're going to bounce shots and you're going to eat heat because your tracks are absolutely enormous, and the armor plating you see on the side is spaced armor. So it's a hell of a lot harder to pen than you would expect. I love this game. I love this. This is so much fun for me. This is true heavy gameplay. This is just like absolutely making life a misery for these guys in front of me. Even though I've only got 1,100 hit points left, we're still holding. There's still all these tanks shooting us. There's a 215B there. Just trying to get this IS-8. We get him. And you can see my health isn't going down in huge big gulps because they're having to fire Premo. Now, this is a bit of a mistake on my part. Go out, and I shouldn't have fired. Come on. No. Missed it, missed it, missed it, missed it. Missed it. Missed it. Missed it. Missed it. Just pull back in, you clown. And rest. Still got two guys behind me who have not moved. Still not moved. But the 3 TDs behind me are still killing people. And if you're in a platoon, this can be a great fun tank. And it can be a really great combo to run. Like a big TD and a mouse. Big TD and a mouse. Mouse hold the line. Big TD do the damage. T54 is telling me minute light. He's not telling me anything I don't know. I know there are still 3 tanks. There's a 215B. These guys are now going to move, which is insane. Because now they're actually visible and they're going to get shot by everyone else. They're now pushing up. Like, unbelievable. They're going to get wrecked. Anyway, I'm telling them negative. They don't listen. They just don't listen. They just don't listen. Yeah, that's them getting wrecked right there. This 215B does a good job. He sits there and he's patient. And our team just drives towards him. I don't know why. If you figure it out, let me know. This might be a bit boring for some of you, but look at this 215B. He's been sitting there and he's been taking little chunks off every once in a while, but he's not being able to decisively do anything to me. Not that I've been able to decisively do anything to him, because he's just hulled down. He's resorted to HE now, which is even funnier. He's firing Hesh. And we're just literally going backwards and forwards doing this. And the other team, I don't know why these two guys moved up. They would have been so much better off just sitting at the back. And I now realise we're in a bit of strife. We've got to start taking some hit points off this 215B, because they've now gone deep. I don't know why. 15 hit point grill is pushing in front of a 183 and a Jagdpanzer 100. Still, for all that, I think this game perfectly illustrates exactly what the mouse brings to the table. Huge hit point pool, massive amounts of armor, the ability to tank copious amounts of damage, just a tremendous all-round vehicle, and something that you can rely upon armor profile-wise in a day and age when there's not a lot that you can guarantee will always get the job done. It really does perform. It does exactly what's written on the box. Even the HE shell of a Jagdpanzer E100 absorbed just so much damage absorbed by this amazing armor profile. And another HE shell just absorbed again. That's Hesh. I mean, that's serious amounts of Hesh. We finally get done trying to back around that corner. Just crazy. We move on there. We did a big amount of damage, bounced huge amounts of shots. What about its mate, the E100? Well, let's not forget that this is the original big dog in World of Tanks Blitz. When I kicked off, this was the tank that everyone had to have at tier 10. People were completely and utterly besotted with this tank. It can side scrape like a champion. But here's the kicker. It doesn't have the same stupid bouncing ability that a mouse does just by driving forward. Like, this thing really will do a lot of bounces when you angle it correctly, but the mouse will also bounce things it's got no right to bounce. Now look at my turret. My turret is only really going to point at the enemy when I'm ready to take a shot. I pull it down and then I point the turret away. Because what that does is makes your tank really, really tough to pen. Now, over-angling the turret creates a flat side that they can hit, so then I put something between me and the other tanks. Want to get one into him, and I'm driving forward, and I'm keeping good cover between me and those tanks in front of me. The thing the E100 does really, really well that the mouse just doesn't is intimidate. Because this thing has a 150mm gun. That means you can pop same tier tanks for 640 and up. And if you roll high on HE, you can do 1,000 damage into the back of things like American tanks, grills, waffle tractors, the sides of the French TDs, all kinds of things. And that's really, really impressive. It doesn't have the best gun handling in the world, but you're talking about a tank that has 2,300 hit points, a massive, massive gun, and the ability to push a flank real hard. I love the mouse as much as the next bloke, but when it absolutely positively has to get wrecked, it's hard to argue with 150mm of German adoration. And that's what you get every time. And you can see I'm driving it very precisely, keeping my angles very flat compared to all the tanks around me, looking for good shots and delivering absolute knockout punches. And it looks really, really good. Massive tank, not as big as the mouse, but every inch as good a prize fighter as the mouse is, which is impressive when you think about that last game and you saw just how much time I spent on target with the mouse, soaking up damage and doing good things. Now that IS-7 has a whole lot of armor, and he's sitting there and he's just sniping, which means I'm going to leave him the hell alone and go back here and look at someone else, because I really don't need to be worried too much about that IS-7. If I had to pick one tank to drive for fun, I'd probably go with the E100. Because let's face it, there is just something special about hitting tanks for 1,000 damage, and you can't really do that in the mouse. But if I had to pick a tank to win, well then it becomes a much harder choice. Specifically too if I'm platooned up. If I'm platooned up, there's every chance that I grab the mouse, because it brings something to the game that is tremendously beneficial to your team. Something that you just don't really get much of anywhere else. That massive, massive armor profile that dominates corners and stops people from advancing and eats shells. And this is something that cannot be overstated. Every time someone is firing at you in a battle, they're not firing at your team. And if you're in an E100 or a mouse, that's something you've really got to take to heart. Because if you're in a mouse and they're firing at you and you're eating hit points, you can soak up so much damage and you can take up so much of the enemy's time. Like you saw in that game, I was on that flank and I was able to hold them there and the rest of the team was able to do damage. And that really extended our opportunity to win the game. It really did. But it's more than that too. If you think about competitive gaming, when you've got guys, and I do a couple of things wrong here by the way. Look at the turret. The turret on the E100, if it's angled up, it'll bounce shots. But when you're coming across here and you're flat-sided to an unspotted target, and they're able to put shots in, they will actually do damage. Now, granted, this is for the most part HE spam that's coming in here. That's 2 shots. The first one was all HE. Anyway, I digress. If you think of competitive gameplay, when good teams play in competition, they try and use the whole team's hit point pool as the whole team's hit point pool. And they share their hit point pool. That's harder to do in a public game, right? So you're running around, you're in a mouse or an E100, and it's harder to share your hit point pool. But if you're aggressive with them and you actually put yourself in a constant situation where people are shooting at you, that's shots they're not pointing at your team. That's more HE coming in again. That is really good for your team. Watch this, 2 E100s, 1 AP shell, 2 AP shell. That is really good for your team. It means that people aren't shooting at your teammates and they're shooting at the best possible target they could be shooting at, for your team anyway. A really big, fat, heavy tank with a whole lot of armor that is completely capable of soaking hit points up, because you've got 2,500 hit points in a mouse or 2,300 in a E100, and look at that E5 over there, he's got 2,000 hit points. IS-7 has 2,050. Like, this is a good thing for your team. So remember that. The other thing is, if you're good enough, you're actually more likely to bounce shots than most of your other teammates. You're in probably the best tank on the battlefield for doing it, and because of that, you being aggressive and taking shots and putting yourself in harm's way can actually really improve the opportunities of your team to win. Now, I've been doing an awful lot of streaming of late. I'm going to start doing giveaways as well. I'm going to try and hit Wargaming up for some stuff. I'm going to start doing more and more and more and more, but the streams have been better and better because I've got better cable, I've got more bandwidth, I'm able to run bots, I've been running alerts, I've been running all kinds of stuff on the streams, and I hope you're enjoying them. We've certainly had a couple of hundred people turn out for most of the days that we've been going, which is really, really good. So keep turning up for those, keep coming along and having a good time, and, you know, I'll keep doing them. Make sure, too, that if you are going to be doing the streams, I'm going to start doing them at a regular time, probably about 10 o'clock in the morning, Aussie time. Tune in and say g'day, and when we start getting the polls and the bots and the in-stream chat and game and stuff going, really take part in it and have a good time and enjoy yourselves. Anyway, until next time, there is also some news coming up, which I'm really keen to talk about. But as always, not until I'm allowed to talk about it. I'm Bushka on Blitz. If you're wondering which is better, the E100 or the mouse, well, it's not really for me to tell you. It's for you to decide. But I think I've highlighted the gameplay styles of those two tanks pretty successfully there, giving you a bit of an idea on what they can do and what they can't do, and why they do it, and why they're successful at doing it. Look after your friends, look after your family, look after your dog, look after yourselves. Be nice to each other, and be nice to yourself. Until next time, stay safe on the battlefield.